Alright, let's get this out of the way right up front. Gothic is not a video game. It's work. It takes time to get good at this game and doesn't bother with novel concepts such as intuitive controls and engaging combat. Nein! A game is not for playing, the German says. A game is to be endured. Some would say that when you've beaten Gothic, you have beaten your own weakness. To endure Gothic is, what some might say, a triumph of will. This game is dirty. It looks, well, frankly, pretty good for a game that came out when it did, and the voice acting runs beyond stupid and laps it to become amazing.
Show me your goods.
If there's one game that needs a how-to, it's this game. But how do you make a how-to about a game whose difficulty is all about how badly the game controls? Well, I'm gonna tell you not only how to stomp the hell out of this game, but I'm gonna show you how to modify this game so that it plays more like a modern game. So let's dig in, shall we?
Show me your goods.
This is one of those games that works right out of the box, but it's absolutely terrible. So we need some mods. And thankfully, you only need 2 patches to get this game running perfectly. Union and the community patch. And while you're there, get a free program called joytokey. Install is simple, just download, point the installer in the right direction and watch them go. And I'll show you how to use the profile that I've created for joytokey later on in the combat section in the video. And I've got all the links in the description. And while you're there, think about subscribing to the channel. Sometimes YouTube likes to take all my hard work and give it a big old golden shower and limit the ads. So if you want more videos like this and want to help keep the channel going, consider kicking in over at Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to videos that Patreons get a month early, like the Fallout DLC Honest Hearts that I just published, and the Trash or Treasure series that highlights games I wanted to talk about but couldn't find time to do a long form video about it. Anyway, enough self-vlogging, back to the video.
I just have to add them, then the stew will be ready.
Stats in Gothic are pretty straightforward, I mean for the most part, because there's not a lot of them, but some of the stats actually don't even do what you think they do. So it's necessary to talk about them so you don't waste your time on stuff that won't help you. There's 2 primary ability scores, strength and dexterity. Strength increases your flat damage and your ability to wield bigger and better melee weapons. It increases your damage through a very simple formula. Damage is calculated by taking your weapon's damage, adding it to your strength, and taking away from the total of the enemy's armor rating. The formula looks like this. As you can imagine, strength is going to be your primary stat if you want to be a pure melee build. But what if you're using bows? Well, that's where dexterity comes in, but it does so weirdly. Bows do flat damage, as do crossbows. Increasing dexterity doesn't, as far as I can tell, increase your damage, which means that increasing dexterity is only good if you're trying to meet the requirements for a bow or crossbow. And thus starts the fine tradition of stats not doing anything in Piranha Bytes games. The real differences between a bow and a crossbow. Bows fire faster but do less criticals and less overall damage. Crossbows are slower and have less range but do a truckload of damage due to a 10% higher crit rate at max level and higher base damage, but a bow can hit from ludicrously high range. What do I mean by max level? Well, you can train your abilities with melee and ranged weapons in this game, and it generally increases your critical chance with the weapon you trained in, which is really nice, but it goes further than that. With bows, the higher your skill, the higher your hit chance. That's right, this is the Morrowind school of combat when it comes to ranged. Bows can miss if you're untrained, so the higher your skill, the more often you hit, and critically hit, so training is super important. With melee weapons, it goes even deeper. It is very difficult when you are untrained in melee weapons to chain together combos due to a weird window of opportunity to chain. So you're more clumsy with the weapon the less skilled you are, which is going to get you killed. So on top of getting a higher crit chance with your weapon skill, your character actually, in a tangible way, gets better with their weapon. It's one of my favorite things about this game. In this playthrough, we're going to be doing one-handed weapons first with bows, and two-handed later if we find that one-handed weapons can't overcome damage resist, but chances are this won't be too big a problem. In general, what matters the most is how many hits it takes to get to the center of the target's squishy bits. And if you can take a person down in 2 hits with a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon, what does it matter if the two-hander did more initial damage? Then there's the thieving skills, which are iffy. I personally noticed that I got caught less when sneaking into people's houses, if I did so while I was sneaking. The general consensus on pickpocketing is that it's useless, so I went and did some testing. The results are not very good. It's possible to make stealing profitable, but even at the highest level, you still have to have a pretty high chance of failing, though that chance seems to go up after you've stolen your first item. So if you exit out of pickpocketing then go in again, you can steal many items before being caught. The problem is, the people that have things worth stealing are immune to being stolen from, so that makes this skill completely worthless. Don't waste 30 skill points on this useless shit. Lockpicking is also worthless, kind of. This one comes with a but. It's worthless because the chests all have combinations. For instance, you have two directions that a lockpick will pick a lock, left and right, and it's a guessing game which direction you need to go in first. But if you bring like 10 lockpicks with you, you could save your game, guess the combo, reload the quick slot, and try it again without losing your picks. So what's the point in investing in something that quick save can do for free? Don't waste any skill points on this either.
I can't teach you anything because you're so inexperienced.
This game is a fairly traditional leveling system. You gain experience points for killing stuff and finishing quests. Every time you level up, you get certain things. You get 10 hit points per level and 10 learning points, which I will refer to as skill points from here on out. Skill points are used for increasing your ability scores or training your skills as stated in the previous section. But in order to train those skills, you have to find a trainer. And most of the time, it's not as easy as just going up to a guy and asking him to train you, and the internet is full of a lot of misinformation that is either based on faulty memory or bugs. In order to train, you need to be in one of the 3 camps in the game, with the exception of a couple of trainers that are found out in the wild like Havilorn. These trainers will require you to have skill points and sometimes ore to train, but sometimes they're going to require you to have a skill proficiency prior to training. The only thing you should be investing in is strength and training in weapons. You can invest in dex, but I only recommend doing that when there's a bow that you want to use but you don't meet the requirements for it. Always leave some SP in the bank for later just in case. The way we want to level is, we take 30 points in strength as soon as we're able, then we train up our one-handed skill to level 1. Why? Because we really don't want to be dealing with combat like this. Then we can take 5 points in dex and wear rings to get us up to 30 to get a decent bow early on. Bows are good against monsters, but there are also other ways to cheese the monsters with a melee weapon that work pretty well if you stick to the game plan. If we stack a ton of strength, we'll hit harder, and in general, we don't need to worry about monsters or anything really because everything goes down in 1 or 2 hits. That's the goal, honestly. Now you might have played this game in the past and you're asking right now, Paulie, is there any way to speed this leveling nonsense up? And I can say that there is a glitch for infinite XP, but that's way in the last sections of the game, and those kinds of exploits are never all that fun. There are some exploits in the game, but the Unity patch fixes a lot of them. If you really hate how slow leveling is going, and you would rather cheat than play the game, there is a command line that will insert a reusable item in your inventory that will add as many skill points as you wish to your character. Again, this is a cheat and I'm none too fond of those, but I'm not going to judge it because the last couple of chapters we'll get to those. Instead, what you need to do in this game is exploit the early game openness. What I mean by this is that in the early game, before you join a faction, all the side quests for every camp are available to you. That means that you can do all the missions for the camp that you want to join, as well as the missions for camps you have no intention of joining, and doing this will put you ahead of the power curve in ore, which is your money in this game, and levels. For the sake of brevity, I'll only be talking about the missions that are absolutely required for joining the old camp, which is the best camp for those who want to try out magic, as they get access to all the magic, and they get all the magic the fastest, as well as some great mage robes. As I said before, our build will be using one-handers and bows, but feel free to save up for a few levels and invest in magic. You can still follow this guide and make it through the game. Hell, it might even be a little easier with magic.
Watch out. The outside world is pretty dangerous. You're only safe inside a camp.
Factions are important in many games, but in Gothic games and Piranha Bytes games in particular, factions are vitally important to not just the story and world building, but to the gameplay because they determine what you get access to and when you get access to it. You can only join one of the 3 factions in the game at a time, and that choice is permanent once you don the armor of that faction. In fact, Joining a faction is one of the only ways to get a set of armor that doesn't totally suck ass. Depending on which faction you join, you'll get access to magic, one-handed and two-handed weapon training, and thieving skills, which are only available in 2 of the 3 camps. Depending on which camp you join, you could get magic in Chapter 1, but the camp that allows you to do that restricts you to Circle 4 magics, which is perfectly fine, but some camps allow you to get magic much later in the game, but give you access to everything. So that's a big decision that we're going to go over here in detail. Like, this game is so complex that it really needed an in-game codex that tells you everything that you need to know, because it really is way too complex to get on a single, second, or even third playthrough. There's just too many variables and too much choice, which sounds like I'm saying that in a negative way, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The first faction that we're going to be talking about is the Old Camp. The Old Camp is the oldest camp, just like it's in his name, but it's the richest due to the fact that it's the first to start exploiting the mines in the valley and trading with the king. In order to understand the Old Camp, we need to understand the story of the game. Let's watch a little informative video about the subject.
The kingdom of Murtana, united by King Robar II. During the long years of his reign, he was able to defeat all foes of his realm. All except one. Against the orcs took its toll, and the prisoners of the realm were to pay the price.
So the Old Camp is a bunch of slave-like laborers toiling away in the mines, collecting ore for a baron named Gomez, who's a real asshole, and I don't mean like one of those Scooby-Doo villains of the week, like in some other games that you might be used to. I mean, he's the kind of guy who rules with an iron fist and is not afraid to ram it down your throat. He's backed by powerful warlords and barons, and he's got an interesting array of maids at his disposal. Now keep in mind that this entire valley is filled with despicable people who were thrown in here for one crime or another. Sure, there's probably some innocents here and there, including mages that got caught in the sphere when it expanded out of control, but for the most part, these people are here because they did some effed up stuff in their past, and their past caught up to them. All the worst people in the valley seem to be concentrated here in the Old Camp. So the Old Camp is set up a trade route where they trade with the king outside the barrier for supplies and vice, in exchange for the ore that they force their diggers to mine. It's more like extortion, really. The king had no choice but to pay the demands of the convicts. Bye, lady! As for skills, the Old Camp opens up the fastest, and it's the camp that you should do all the missions for in Chapter 1. You'll get access to Diego, who will train your strength and dexterity for free, Scatty, who will train your one-handed weapon skills, Thoris, who will train you in two-handed weapons, and sometime around Chapter 2, you'll get access to the Fire Mage's magic, if that's something you'd like to do. There's 2 areas of importance in the Old Camp. The Outer Ring, which houses the Diggers and the Shadows. The Shadows are a group of spies and thieves, while the Diggers are the slave labor in the camp. They live in these little ramshackle huts, which are built from wood and debris. Then there's the Inner Ring, home to the camp guards, the fire mages, and the ore barons. You only get access to this area after you join the camp. If you join the other camps, there's a chance you won't see the inner courtyard until much later in the game. The New Camp is the next faction, and they're pretty unique. They mine ore, but they don't trade that ore for nothing. They're hoarding all of that ore because the water mages, who head up the efforts at the New Camp, believe they can simply blow up the magical barrier using the magic contained within each nugget of this ore. That's right. The ore has magical properties which are conveniently lost when smelted down, but the blades made with this ore are still sharper and sturdier than regular iron. The water mages believe that if they get enough of this ore and focus stones, that they can create a magical explosion powerful enough to disturb the magical balance holding the barrier together, which would cause it to come down, freeing not only themselves, but also release all those pussy-hungry convicts into the wild who have been locked up this whole time. But that's a problem for Gothic 2 to worry about. about. The new camp formed when a bunch of those convicts, led by the water mages, left the old camp, dissatisfied with the way Gomez ran things, and the new camp went off with the ideals of freedom and laissez-faire economics and casual Fridays. Their philosophy is every man for himself. You are the master of your own destiny. You could be anything you want to be if you just work hard enough. And you know what happened? The people who had power broke off into their own little secluded fiefdoms. The Rice Lord, Lee, the Lord of the Mercenaries, and the mages who sit on high, reading and stuffing themselves as the people living in the cave below work and toil and get drunk off their asses in order to live another day, toiling in the mines, breathing in toxic fumes all day, and hacking their lungs out all night. So there's basically no difference between them and the old mine, except that their form of extortion is official as opposed to just tolerated. The new camp tries to present themselves as more open and free, but the gameplay sort of gets in the way of that by preventing you from pursuing anything until you've jumped through enough hoops to be called a mercenary or a mage, just like all the other camps. So in a way, it doesn't feel any different than the other camps, although it does feel like you are less likely to get jumped by hungry miners and killed in the new camp than you would be in the old camp. Which is ironic because the new camp is the North Korea of Gothic because they don't trade for supplies with the king, so most people live off the rice that is produced by the Rice Lord, who, like the ore barons of the old camp, rules with an iron fist, which he can't help shoving into people for the tiniest infraction. This is the only camp that I know of that will train you in two-handed weapons without requiring you to train one-handed weapons first, but this is the camp that will make you wait the longest amount of time to train in magic. If you plan on using two-handed weapons, this is the camp you want to be a part of because it's nice to save a couple levels worth of skill points because two-handed weapons are expensive as hell to train. The sect camp is the final camp in the game, and they have the most unique backstory of them all. They are essentially a cult led by a man named Iberian. Iberian smoked a bunch of hash and had a vision of a god called the Sleeper. The Sleeper guided him into the swamp to the ruins of an old temple that looks like something straight out of Mayan architecture. Iberian eventually got a following, and anyone who was willing to believe in the Sleeper were granted refuge in the sect camp to learn, to study, and to pray to their new god. They believed that this new god, which they had abandoned all of their previous gods for, is the only one who can and will set them free of their imprisonment. There is a social hierarchy in the camp that is actually worth knowing about, because if you talk to the wrong people, some of them will get mad at you and seem slightly perturbed by your ignorance. These guys are the smoke 'em if you got 'em sect, and they spend most of their time in the swamp dodging these crazy looking things, and the rest of their day they spend getting high as shit off of swamp weed, hallucinating, and eating all the brownie dough in the entire camp. You've got you, which is nobody. You got novices, who are barely people. You got Templars, who are better than novices and get sent away from home on suicide missions into caves to kill xenomorphs so they can extract their jizam to make some scissorp for the gurus. The gurus are the top of the food chain, and you and novices are not allowed to speak to them unless you are spoken to first. Kind of like your dad with his kids are to be seen and not heard stance on your existence. The factions, however, do very little to affect the story because no matter which faction you join, you will eventually be funneled into the same exact story by Chapter 2. So don't worry about missing pivotal story points, this isn't that type of game. Chapter 1 is the only chapter that really matters, and even then you can go and do every faction mission to experience basically everything the game has to offer in one playthrough. But there's one thing in the game that's very important to talk about, and has been the most contentious thing about this game and just about every Piranha Bytes game that has ever released.
My servants call me Bonnet Beck.
Combat in Gothic is like having sex for the first time. It's clumsy, awkward, maybe even a lot of blood, and worst of all, you're never sure if you're doing it right. It's the number one thing that people talk about when they talk about this game. They bring it up as the reason that they never even bothered to play this diamond in the rough, and yes, the rough is very rough. To use another analogy, it's like finding the moist spot in the thicket of hair. You'll be happy when you find it, but you'll always question if it was worth it. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get serious. In the beginning, you're gonna have issues. a whole subscription's worth of issues. The combat is supremely funky in the beginning, and as I mentioned earlier, it's quite possible to make it better. The first thing you need to do is plug in a controller and download joytokey, and go to the description below the video and download my joytokey profile. I've created a very versatile profile that will allow you to play this game like it were a mid-2000s action RPG instead of a mid-90s shooter. Props to anyone that got that reference. But a controller profile alone isn't going to get you very far if you keep getting stun locked, and the only way to avoid this is to get good, and I have the perfect way to do that. To get good at this combat, you have to decipher it like a linguist tries to decipher an ancient dead language. The way the combat works is, you pull out your weapon, that's step 1. Then step 2, you hold down the right trigger to ready your weapon. Then, using the directional stick, you press forward to execute a lunging attack, or you use the left and right direction to swing your weapon back and forth. At first, this will feel clumsy because of the timing and the fact that your character is untrained, but you'll get used to it. Just spend some time before a fight, shadowboxing essentially, to get the hang of things, and eventually you'll feel like it's second nature. But what about defense? Well, there's 2 classifications for enemies in this game: enemies that carry weapons and those that use their natural weapons. Humanoids versus animals, essentially. Each classification will determine which type of defense you use. You have 2 defensive maneuvers at your disposal, which are only available to you when you have a melee weapon drawn. If you're fighting a humanoid, hold the weapon ready key and press down. Your character will hold their weapon up, and as long as you hold down the key for the duration of that animation, you'll be invincible to melee attacks, but not ranged or monster attacks. There's a second way to block the incoming damage from monsters, and that is to release the weapon ready button and just press back while your weapon is drawn. This will execute a backstepping maneuver, and while you're executing this, you'll have iframes against any attack. So, in theory, this is the better defensive maneuver on paper because it blocks both types of melee damage, but it's not, because it can easily put you out of position for a counterattack when facing a human. So, like in life, everything has its uses. Use the right defense for the right job. Monsters are what will give you the hardest time, so what you need to do is get used to the cheesiest tactics the game has ever birthed. I call it the swing step, and yes, it's a lot like a dance. What you do is you swing your weapon to the side once, and after the hit lands, immediately step backward to avoid the animal's follow-up attack, which will come so quickly that your follow-up swing cannot stop it. If you swing once and step back, you'll be immune to their attacks, and any one-on-one encounter will be a cakewalk. But that's the thing, how do you get them one-on-one? The enemy AI in this game is impressive in some ways, the group tactics especially. If you walk into a pack of mobs, they'll flank you and annihilate you, and since this game has a very primitive form of what we like to call Souls-like combat nowadays, meaning single target lock-on, you'll get your stool and your prostate and your colon all pushed in at the same time, and it'll be very painful. So what you do is walk up to a pack and find the one animal that's furthest from the pack and inch your way up to them until they turn to you and start barking at you. Eventually they're going to start running up to you, and you want to make sure that you got enough space between you and the one that's running at you and the pack that they just came from so that you don't aggro the whole entire pack the moment you hit them once. This will work for most monsters, but not all. Some have a different pack AI, and if you start the aggro process on one of them, any other pack members within 20 feet will be alerted and come join in on barking. Wolves are the prime example of this, but so are goblins and orcs. But these monsters have a habit of wandering off from the pack, and this is the perfect time to use the aggro pull trick on them. When they've wandered too far away, it takes some patience, but you can actually drag them away from the pack. But the best way to get good at this combat is to train your preferred weapon, the moment you have the experience to spare. I recommend that the first 2 levels go directly to strength, but at level 4, buy training. Then at level 9, maybe even a bit earlier, more strength, and max out your weapon if you can. You need 70 strength to wield the best weapon in the game, so get that up to 70 and get trained up. You should be able to do this by level 11. Then it's time to become a god. Well, sort of.
Convict, I've got an offer to make you.
Is it possible to achieve godhood in a game that's obsessively overbalanced? Not really, but you can come really close to it by targeted leveling, meaning only leveling the stuff that you need and getting certain key items, which I'm going to show you how to do in my typical exhaustive detail. But first, what's this game about? Well, you're a guy without a name. I mean, you have a name, but no one wants to hear about it.
I'm Diego. I'm not interested in who you are.
Man, I don't know if your mom's ever told you this, but that's fucking rude. To achieve godhood in this game, you only need one thing. You need a one-handed sword called Scar's Sword, which is a sword named after the guy who owns it, and kudos to Piranha Bytes for creating such interesting names for literally the best weapon in the game. I don't care if other weapons do more damage. It doesn't matter if I'm one-shotting most shit and two-shotting everything else, okay? Moving on. To get into the old camp inner circle, we need to do some missions for the outer circle to gain their trust, because they don't just let anyone in to see Gomez. Gomez has a lot of enemies out there, people who want him dead, at least he thinks so. Therefore, we gotta show that we're trustworthy.
I've talked to Thoris.
And what did he say?
He says that I can join the old camp if you think that I'm good enough.
Looks like I have myself a new job.
Do we start right now?
First, there are a few things you should know.
By talking to Diego, you'll get a rundown on what's going on in both this camp and the new camp, as well as the sec camp. He's good to talk to in order to get your bearings on who's who in the colony. But Nameless One don't care about that, he just wants some cool-ass armor like what Diego's got on him.
What do I have to know to be accepted in the old camp?
If you want to join the camp, you'll have to earn some brownie points. There are a few influential people in the outer ring. Most of them are shadows. If you manage to impress them, it'll earn you a few brownie points. Then you'll have to stand the test of faith. Besides, there are a lot of skills every new arrival has to learn. The more you learn, the more valuable you'll be for us.
Where do I find the important people?
Well, you're looking at one of them. Then there's Thoris. You already know him. As for the others, you'll have to find that out by yourself. If you don't manage to do that, you don't belong here anyway.
Now this guy talks like it's easy to do, especially when guys are constantly asking me for money.
Hey, you! I don't think I've seen you here before.
No wonder. I've only just got here.
Then watch out. The outside world is pretty dangerous. You're only safe inside a camp.
Which is immediately followed by this.
Hey, you.
Are you talking to me?
I'm warning you, people like you can get into trouble awfully quick round here. And most of the guys they chuck in here are bastards. They think they can do what they like to you, but we won't allow that. Gomez wants some peace in the camp, and we guards make sure he gets it. But it's a job that doesn't come cheap. That's why I'm asking you for some ore. Look on it as a kind of token of friendship. You help us, and we'll help you. If you get in trouble, we'll be there for you.
So yeah, you're safe inside a camp so long as you pay the extortion money. This is like that time I was walking home from a figure drawing class in downtown Los Angeles and accidentally parked too close to Skid Row. I paid out a whole pack of cigarettes in extortion that night on the way back to my car.
Just go through the outer ring and talk to people. Then you'll find out who's important.
Diego, do you have any idea how hard it is for a gamer like me to talk to people? We're the type of people you invite to a party to make it look like you got a lot of friends, you know what I mean? We don't talk to people, we just sort of hang out on a wall like moss. There's 7 quests in this camp, and you have to complete at least 6 of them to be granted admission to the Shadows, a group of thieves that reside in the outer ring of the city. One of these quests is fighting in the arena, and unfortunately, that one is out of the question since this guide is focused on beginners. Also, that mission bugs out sometimes, and you end up getting killed upon exiting the arena. We don't want to get locked into that error, so we'll be focusing on the following quests. Whistler's Sword. This one's one of the easiest missions that you'll do, but you have to keep a few things in mind. You see this guy right here? He wants a sword from a guy named Fisk, but Fisk doesn't want to give it to him. Maybe he just doesn't like his face. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't like his face either.
Hi, I'm new here.
What do you want from me?
I want to become one of you. I want to join the camp.
Looking for people to support you, eh? If you want me to have a word with Diego about you, you need to do me a favor.
The last time a dude named Whistler asked me to do him a favor, I got a venereal disease. Yeah, fool me once.
What kind of favor do you want?
I want one of Fisk's weapons. He's one of the traders at the marketplace. You won't sell it to me. It's a broadsword with ornaments. I'll give you 100 ore to collect the weapon for me, but don't tell him about me.
Okay, give me the 100 ore nuggets. I'll get the thing.
So you go to the getting place to get the thing, and Fisk accosts you as you get close to him.
Hey, man.
Hey man, you too, man.
I'm Fisk. I trade goods of all kinds. If you ever need anything, you're in the right place here.
Yeah, can I get a little bit of whatever you're smoking? That shit sounds like it's taking your brain for a real ride of a lifetime.
I'd like to buy a sword, but not just a simple one. I'd like something more ornamental.
I have one you'll like. The shadow who wanted to collect it won't be coming anymore.
I'm not sure what that means, but fine, mister.
Shut up and take my money!
Head back over to Whistler, tell him that it was 110 ore to get the 10 ore he owes you back, then hand him his sword.
Fisk wants 110 ore for his sword now.
And you want me to give you the 10 ore now?
I thought you wanted to have that sword.
Here, take it. And now hurry.
I have your sword.
Wasn't too hard, was it? Whatever. You do me a favor and I'll do you.
Whoa, hey, I don't like the way you said that, man. All right, 1 down, 5 more to go. The next mission sounds difficult, but it's not. Now we're gonna go get a recipe from the swamp camp.
Hey, you! I trade in swamp weed and potions from the sect camp. Do you want something?
This guy sells something called swamp weed, and it's exactly what you think it is. Dexter's getting tired of selling that regular shit, and he heard that the swamp people got that good shit that makes you see aliens. DMT. Now the best way to make this happen is to head over to swamp camp, but we can pretend that we're all into that weird cult shit if we wanna.
The sleeper be with you, stranger. I'm here to guide you onto the right path.
Listen, dude, I'm a very simple man, you know. I like my gods jealous and vengeful, not high and sleepy, you know what I mean?
And which is the right path?
The path of the sleeper. He alone has the power to set us free. The gurus are preparing a great invocation in our camp. They want to get in contact with the sleeper. So far, he's just talked to us in visions. But now, it's time to get in touch with him.
You know what, man? I don't think they got long distance here. And that sounds like an international call. That's gonna cost you an arm and a leg. Have you tried a Ouija board?
We'll need as many supporters as possible for that. By focusing our spiritual power, we'll get through to him. Our camp is some distance away in the swamp. I can take you there, though, if you want.
Take me to your camp. I want to have a look at it.
Very good. I'll go ahead. Follow me.
And if you do a good job, we'll get a nearly invincible guide that could take us there. And what do we do with all that power? Well, we make him kill as many enemies on the way there because we could get the experience for it. Remember, kids, programming is hard. Before we leave, however, we need some lockpicks. Fisk sells them for 10 ore apiece, so pick up at least 2 of them.
Here we are. Down there lies the camp of the Brotherhood. Go through the gate and speak to my brothers. I'm sure you haven't come here for nothing.
Thanks, bro. I'm sure I'll get exactly what I need, if you know what I mean. Once we get to the camp, turn left and head to the temple ruins, then turn around and head up the stairs of the catwalk above. In the house with the singular guard in the front is a guy named Cor Cologne. Abuse quick save and figure out the combination of the guy's lock, and when you have it memorized, quick load and try it again without losing any of your picks. And the recipe is yours. You can even steal it right in front of the guy and he won't even get mad at you, because he's too busy being high off his ass and talking to his dead grandmother.
Dimethyltryptamine, that's a DMT tattoo.
I have the recipe you wanted.
Very good. Show it to me. Good. Now I can produce the potions myself. You are a good man. I'll tell Diego about it. Here you go. Take that for your efforts.
Take what? I don't know. The dude is so high he probably thought he handed something to me. Now the next quest is getting trained up by Fingers, but in order for him to train you, he's gonna need you to go see this cool hermit living in the wilderness named Cavalorn.
I want to become a skilled pickpocket.
Forget it. You'll never make a skilled thief unless you can sneak around.
I want to learn how to sneak around.
I believe, no false modesty, that I'm one of the best thieves they ever chucked into this colony. But when it comes to teaching how to sneak around, Cavalorn is the better man for you.
Now, this guy can train you how to sneak, but he can also train you on how to use bows. Some of you might be yelling at the screen, "Sneak is useless!" To which I'll say this video isn't meant for you. Sneak is awesome for sneaking into homes, looting them, and for sneaking up behind bowmen and shivving them. Especially early on when your resistances to bows are low. It's situational, sure, but there will be situations. Oh, let me tell you, this game is full of situations. And before you go to Cavalorn, it's important that you have enough skill points in order to actually train and sneak, so grind if you have to. Aside from sneaking, remember to train up strength. We want strength up to 70 before we take on Scar. I can't say this enough. We want it up to 70 before we get to Scar. To get those skill points, we want to travel around the outskirts of the camp area, chewing up every scavenger that we see, and mole rat, and exploring these caves. Behind the camp, on the other side of the main gate, is a cave where there will be a dead guard and an amulet of protection on him. We need that for another mission later, so pick that up while you're here. Along the way, you'll stumble into many items of value, and you'll notice that there's 2 goblins blocking your path. I went straight up to them and killed them, but if you're having a hard time, run past them and have Cavalorn take care of them for you. Just don't get between him and his arrows or end up shooting you instead. Cavalorn's a pretty important dude, so whatever you do, don't piss him off.
You're learning fast.
Sorry, wrong button. Get him to train you in sneak and head back to Fingers to complete yet another mission. Now we only got 3 left.
You wouldn't speak up for me in front of Diego, would you?
Yes, you've learned something which makes you quite useful to us. We can make use of skilled thieves in this camp here. You'll have my vote.
The next mission is the Vanish Guard. This mission, if you picked up the amulet while grinding out the last mission, will finish itself. Just go up to this guy to the right of the main entrance of the camp and give him the amulet. If you want, you can equip it and use it as cheap armor, and while you're at it, get the armor from Fisk. That will make the grinding you have to do at this stage of the game much more bearable. When you're done grinding and you've killed everything you possibly can, you'll be around level 6, maybe 7, but we need to get to level 11, so if you can, keep grinding out the monsters using the swing step maneuver I taught you in the combat section, and when you're all done, turn in the amulet for this mission. Next we talk to Thoris.
I'm quite capable of doing anything you tell me to.
Oh, so you're intent on failing, eh? There is one thing that only someone who's not with Gomez can see to. But I'm warning you, you blow this and you'll be in mighty big trouble.
Yeah, you mean if I blow this impossible to blow mission that I'll be in trouble? Okay, well, I think I'm willing to take that risk.
I'm ready for your task.
What I'm about to tell you is between you and me, and nobody else must ever hear about it. Understood?
Sure.
We have a problem with a guy from the new camp. His name's Mordrag. He's been stealing from the ore barons. Of course, that applies to a lot of the rogues in the new camp. But this guy has the nerve to come to our camp and sell our stolen goods to our boys. He's gone too far, but he knows I can't do anything about it.
Why?
Because he's under the protection of the mages.
So we need to go do a little MDK on this guy Mordrag, or we can warn him that he's about to die, and he'll take us to the new camp if we're willing to go with him. And just like our trip to the swamp, we can have him kill every monster on the way there. Thoris gets what he wants, and we get what we want. Another mission well done with very little sweat off our brow.
He's never gonna show his face around here again.
I'd have felt happier if you'd killed him.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I guess. And next time I'll murder the guy. Sound good?
Horace says we could make use of someone like you. That's very good for you. You've found enough people to speak in your favor, but you still have to pass the test of faith.
The next mission is the Test of Faith, and it's the final mission before we become an official good boy of the old camp. We are to deliver a letter from the boss of the old mine to Thoris. It's a test of faith because the new mine apparently wants this letter real bad, so returning it to the camp is enough of a test of our loyalty to become a sworn member of the Shadows. Before we head up to the mine, spend some of your points on strength and train up to level 1 and one-handed with Scatty. You can do this by talking to the fighters in the arena, Kurgo in particular, and have a beer with him. He'll tell you about Scatty training fighters, and this will give you the ability to ask to be trained. Next, head to the old mine, and to do that, just exit through the main gate and keep heading straight over the bridge, around the forest, and keep following the trail until you come to this little hill leading up to a fence. Ian is at the bottom of the main mine shaft in front of a supply table. He'll give you the list, and then it's just a matter of walking back to the old camp and handing it to Thoris. And then you're officially a member of the old camp. At this point, you can go into the inner circle and mug Scar for his weapon, but if you're only level 6 or 7 at this point, you're gonna have a hard time. If you're low level, I suggest going through Chapter 2 first. Chapter 2 is pretty straightforward. Go here, fetch some things, etc. Iberian, the cool guy with the female slaves, is looking for a focus stone, and one of his novices went off to get it but never came back. Turns out he's just been chilling out, talking to the sleeper and getting high as Shaggy when he believes his dog can talk to him.
Scram! You have no business to be here.
I'm searching for the focus.
Unfortunately, you're too late for that. I've already found it. And I'm keeping it for myself.
Whoa, bro, no way. I was looking for that. Well, you're too late, bro. No way. Yes way. Bogus. Totally bogus. Then you get a mission to deal with the mine crawler's nest in the old mine. If you train up to level 1 melee, you should be able to just swing back and forth, easily killing the mine crawlers. Or if you get a tall vantage point, snipe them with arrows if you trained up your bow skill. The mine crawler queen goes down easy. Just watch this cheesy shit.
An hour later.
At this point, there's no way you're not level 11. And if you're not, go find a way to be. Next is our prize, Scar's sword, but we need to get it off of Scar first. So, what you do is, walk up to the big bastard and start wailing on him. If you don't take him down the first time, he'll warn you that he'll kill you the next time, and drink his only potion. But here's the thing, he won't kill you, and that potion he drank, it didn't heal him all the way. So you could just keep attacking him, and every time you do, he dies a little more. Once you knock him down, grab the sword and everything on his body and get the hell out of there. And at this point, all that struggling that you've been doing up to now, all of that is a distant memory. This sword will one-shot most low-level orcs and two-shot an orc warrior with a lucky crit. This game is no longer a challenge, and coincidentally, that's when you'll start to feel like this. So the biggest fucked up thing about this game, the most fucked up thing about this game is the fact that there are not one, not two, but like 3 different long ass fetch quests that send you across the fucking map to all different corners of the map to find things that you have absolutely no idea where they're gonna be. You gotta find a tongue of a fucking fire lizard, you gotta find the horn of a shadow beast, you gotta find this, you gotta find that. This game is so fucked up. You have to find these things without knowing where they're gonna be, where to look for them, etc, etc. He gives you some vague directions and you're supposed to just go out and find this shit, right? But oh my fucking god, is that boring? It's so fucking boring. You know, I've walked this entire map now 3 times. I know every inch of this fucking map now. Why would I want to keep going through that? I don't know what it is. They were padding the time in this they did not need to pad the time. All they needed to do was make this dude give you the Ulumulu. That's it. Just give me the Ulumulu. So you know what? When you get to this point, here's what I'm gonna suggest. Cheat. Open up the command line, right? Here's how you do it. Here's how you do this, right? And I'm gonna provide a cheat list down in the bottom because this is fucking dumb. So what you do is you open up your stat sheet, right? And you type in the following word, Marvin, right? And then you hit S, and it's gonna say test mode is on there in the corner, right? And then you hit F2, and then you go to the link that I have in the description, and you find the items that you're supposed to give to this guy, and you just give them to yourself. Because this should have just been a thing that he gives you. You shouldn't have to go running around for the 13th fucking time all over the goddamn map. Because this isn't the last time they're gonna have you do this. This is only chapter 4. There's still chapter 5 and chapter 6 to go through. This game is too long and there's too much fucking around in it. Now, if you want to beat it traditionally, go for it. I've given you enough tools at this point to be able to do that. But I'm going to tell you right now, this game is not interesting enough to do like a long KOTOR style video, so I'm not gonna do that. I mean, the game itself has to be interesting enough to support the video, and it doesn't support the video. You know, I've never seen anybody do a video about this game that was over an hour long that was actually interesting. So sorry. I know if you were expecting like a really long video on this, I'm sorry, I really can't do it. I have not beaten this game ever, and I will never beat the game. But personally, I think that people have a lot of rose-tinted memories about this game. I think they remember the first chapter for the most part, but they don't remember the later chapters where the game has you running all around God's green earth looking for one single item or looking for a series of the same item, like with the Focus Stone quests. It's annoying. After you have to do it for the second or third time, it's like your brain just sort of checks out, because the landscape is interesting, but it's too small to support that many fetch quests. and the chances are the places that you're being sent to, you've already seen them once or twice, and this is the third time you're seeing them, and you're hating your life. So I think that this game is worth playing, but I think it's also worth just cheating at the end of it when you get the third fetch quest, because it's like, I don't feel like doing this. So, time for a story. Gothic 1 came out in 2001, a time when games were blocky, textures needed to be put on Ritalin in order to sit still, and the whole industry was figuring things out. I remember stumbling across it at Best Buy of all places and picking it up for my friend Larry for his birthday. But then I ended up opening it and playing it myself, and his birthday came and went. Whoops. I was 21 years old. I had just started drinking legally, and this game came out at a time when Larry had gone off to live with a roommate and I barely saw him anymore, so I had plenty of time to spend by myself in my exile in Wilmington, Delaware, and in between abusing myself, I'd sit down and try to play this game. It was filled with frustrations at the combat. It was clunky as hell and hard to chain together combos fast enough to keep the enemy, which was always charging forward to kill you, from getting a lucky crit in. And the way the spawns worked, well, I hated it. I remember going through the entire map that was open to me at the time, clearing out all the mole rats and scavengers, and having barely enough healing items to start tackling the wolves. And no matter how hard I try, I would never just aggro one wolf, I'd always pull the whole friggin' pack. And they'd end up killing me quicker than I could kill even one of them. And every time I died, I had to wait upwards of a minute for that game to reload. It was a nightmare, but there was just something about the game that kept me playing through. I wanted to know more about the story, all the twists and turns it took. I wanted to level up and kill those damn wolves. I didn't want this game to beat me, but it all felt so hopeless. I kept looking down the road and seeing no light coming up in the horizon. Then I talked to Scatty. I learned that he could train my one-handed skill, and I had no idea what that would mean. The way he described it, it sounded like I would actually be able to swing the sword better, but I wasn't holding out any hope. I had never seen another game do that, so what was the chance that this one, with its bare-bones mechanics and simplistic combat, was going to? But then I went outside and took a swing at the first enemy I could find, and oh my god, I was swinging that sword back and forth so quickly that I was stun-locking everything to death. Sure, I couldn't fight orcs yet, but I was staying alive long enough to actually get practice in, and because of that, I was learning how to block attacks, dodge attacks. I was learning how to play the game, and it was all because of that one discovery. The desperation that the game made me feel when confronted with failing over and over again forced me to pursue every avenue at a time when there wasn't many websites available to provide walkthroughs. I had to rely on instincts and desperation, and because I was desperate enough to find an answer, I took a chance on a skill that I didn't know would work, and lo and behold, it not only worked, but made the game more fun. It's a design philosophy that I wish more game companies would have the balls, the vulva, to pursue. Amidst all these UI hints, there lies a game that inspires the imagination and curiosity of a player, and that's what Gothic is to me. A game that's full of wonder, discovery, desperation, and hope. And that, most of all, is why you should buy this game on GOG using the affiliate link in the description below. Love ya! Bye!